Chapter 71. Breaking the record. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 71. Breaking the record. As Ao Longyu's array formation appeared, the others were somewhat surprised. It was not that they were surprised by Ao Longyu using an array formation, but that the array formation was too ordinary. There were many people who had tried using array formations to enter the Jade Pool, but none of them succeeded. "Junior sister, what are you going to do?" The more she couldn't understand, the more curious Hong Wuan became. Lin and the others were the same. They couldn't believe they actually didn't understand what Ao Longyu was planning to do. They had more or less researched on array formations before. However, they couldn't see the possibility of entering the Jade Pool through this formation. Could it really only be this junior sister was merely playing around? While they were still thinking, Ao Longyu had already activated the array formation. However, Ao Longyu was also absorbed by the fog during the activation process. It was as if she was about to touch the fog and fail. Many people felt that Ao Longyu had already failed. It was just another failure. No one cared. Hong Wuan and the others also felt that Ao Longyu had failed. But they still watched. After all, that strange feeling that they had in their heart had yet to disperse. Soon, they saw it. They saw a reversal. Ao Longyu, who was about to be absorbed by the fog, paused in that instant. She stopped at the edge, right beside Jianglan. At this moment, Jianglan saw Ao Longyu with a faint smile. Ao Longyu's voice sounded. She had said it in dragon language. Exclusion. In that instant, Ao Longyu, who had been on the verge of defeat, suddenly flew backward. It was as if something had forcefully pushed her backward. There was no resistance. Behind her was the Jade Pool. How could this be? Hong Wuan was a little surprised. This change completely exceeded her expectations. What surprised her even more was that Ao Longyu had already flown above the Jade Pool. Once she landed, it was equivalent to successfully entering the Jade Pool. No, this was already considered a success. There's something strange about the array formation. Lin Anshin was similarly shocked. That array formation was somewhat extraordinary. But it seemed so simple. She had actually used such a method to enter the Jade Pool. So the trick to truly enter the Jade Pool was to rely on the fog to enter. Lu Jian watched everything. He naturally saw that Ao Longyu did not enter with her own power. It was the power of the fog. Senior sister went in. Lin Xia was in disbelief. For that moment, she had no idea what had happened. Jing Ting and Mu Xiu didn't understand, but they knew how Ao Longyu managed to get in. It had really exceeded their expectations. Jianglan looked at Ao Longyu, who was about to land. He knew that Ao Longyu had succeeded. He could sense that the goddess diagram had been activated. He could now borrow the Jade Pool's power to cultivate. How impressive! To use an exclusion array formation, dragon language, and spirit language spell all in one go to enter the Jade Pool. Although it is partly due to luck, it is still not simple to do so. It seemed easy, but if she made any mistakes, she would be eliminated. Ao Longyu landed on the surface of the lake. At this moment, everyone was in an uproar. She went in. Heavens! Which summit is this junior sister from? I thought that no one would be able to enter this year. How did someone enter? As for those who did not pay attention, they looked up and saw someone standing in the Jade Pool. They were all stunned. What happened? How did someone enter? I just lowered my head. How did this happen? Oh my God, what did I miss? The appearance of the Jade Pool goddess was unprecedented for the entire Kunlun. However, they actually lowered their heads and didn't see the Jade Pool goddess walk into the Jade Pool. It was a scene that was unprecedented and was not going to happen again in the near future. Yet, they had missed it when it was right in front of their eyes. Boom! At this moment, the entire Kunlun began to vibrate. It was as if it was informing everyone in Kunlun that someone had entered the jade pool. Hong Wuan looked at all of this and sighed in his heart. She sighed for herself and for her junior sister. Junior brothers and sisters, stand properly. The true ceremony has begun, Linen said. His voice echoed around the jade pool. Everyone could hear it. At this moment, no one spoke. The jade pool observance ceremony had entered the final stage. This was something that had never happened in many years. Jianglan stood on the spot, looking at Ao Longyu in the jade pool. At this time, he could see that the jade pool was carving Ao Longyu's picture. It was as if she was acknowledging Ao Longyu's identity. The surrounding fog flew into the jade pool, complementing Ao Longyu who was standing in the middle of the lake. Ao Longyu's body began to glow. Flawless, holy, beautiful. Multicolored light blossomed from the jade pool, illuminating the entire Kunlun. Immediately afterward, 9 beams of light shot toward the Kunlun 9 summits. This was the influence that came from the jade pool. It could increase the power of Kunlun's cultivation environment. As long as Kunlun fused with the 9 beams of light, the cultivation environment of the 9 summits of Kunlun would be greatly improved. It would be even better than before. This was a good thing for everyone. Everyone watched as the 9 beams of light merged into the 9 summits of Kunlun. However, just as the 9 beams of light were about to merge into the summits, an accident happened. Boom! When the 9 rays of light fused into the summits, the 9th summit's light shattered with a bang. Chapter 72. Targeted by the Jade Pool. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 72. Targeted by the Jade Pool. The light that was going to fuse with the 9th summit shattered with a bang in front of everyone's eyes. It was as if the 9th summit could not accept changes to its environment. Jiang Lan sighed as he watched this scene. The netherworld aura on the 9th summit was too heavy. This light should not be compatible with the aura of the netherworld. Especially with the recent eruption of the netherworld aura. This should be the reason why it failed. Perhaps it would fail even if there wasn't an eruption. The 9th summit was special in Kunlun. It was not special that such a thing happened. However, after today, the 9th summit might be even more rejected in Kunlun by the disciples. The others all understood a bit, but they didn't think too much or discuss about it. This was not something disciples like them needed to care about. It was an issue that belonged to the summit leaders. Jing Ting and Mu Xiu looked at Jiang Lan. Jiang Lan was the only disciple of the 9th summit. If the fusion failed, it meant that the 9th summit he was on could not be covered by the spiritual energy of the Jade Pool, which meant that the 9th summit would be weaker than the other 8 summits. Jiang Lan would probably feel uncomfortable about this. However, the Jade Pool's transformation was still ongoing, so they could only continue looking on for now. This was the only change in many years. Although Jiang Lan sighed, his heart was still calm. To him, the 9th summit was more suitable for his cultivation than any other peak. As for the other summits becoming better, that was the business of the other summits. He was neither jealous nor envious. He maintained a neutral attitude towards this matter. Splash! At this time, another change occurred in the Jade Pool. A faint light enveloped everyone, and then water droplets appeared around the Jade Pool. Spiritual energy seeped out from the water droplets, as well as a mysterious aura. It was like a water pearl condensed from the essence of the sun and moon. Then, the light expanded, covering everyone around the Jade Pool. This was a gift from the Jade Pool for the Jade Pool observance ceremony. This was something that most people did not expect. The closer one was to the Jade Pool, the bigger the water droplet one could obtain. Jiang Lan was on the mountain peak, which was equivalent to the inner regions of the Jade Pool. Hence, he also had a water droplet the size of a duck egg before him. Most of the people on the mountain peak had water droplets of this level. Those behind them, even if they were only one step away from the mountain peak, merely received a fingernail-sized water droplet. It was completely different. Jianlan watched as the water droplets fell. Then, he saw the senior brothers and sisters in front of him reach out to receive them. He followed suit. He extended his hand and let the water drop onto his hand. As the water droplet fell, he felt a cold sensation on his hand, like the clear waters of a mountain spring. Moreover, Jianlan could sense that this water droplet was very helpful to his cultivation. However, when the water droplets were in his hands, he felt a weak aura start to affect them. Then, he saw a tiny wisp of black gas enter the water. Soon, the water droplet lost its balance. It was as if the internal structure had been damaged. Bang! In an instant, the water droplet shattered and dispersed. Water splashed everywhere. Some landed directly on Jianlan. Jianlan was somewhat surprised by this sudden scene. It had actually shattered. His clothes were stained with the aura of the netherworld, which affected the defenseless water droplets. This had caused it to shatter. The aura in the water droplet was not affected. However, he was unable to condense the water back into a duck egg-sized droplet. He could only allow the water droplet to shatter and dissipate. When Jianlan saw this, he slowly lowered his hand. The sudden shattering of the bead made a loud noise. In a quiet place, this sound was ear-piercing, causing everyone to look over. They were all surprised. Why did the water drop suddenly shatter? What happened? Many people did not know what had happened. Was it because the Jade Pool did not approve of Jianlan? Or did that junior sister in the Jade Pool not approve of him? Lu Zhou could feel the random guesses of everyone around and slowly said. Perhaps junior brother did not know that the netherworld aura will stain his clothes, causing there to be some effect on these droplets. Only after hearing Lu Zhou's words did they understand that this junior brother wasn't being targeted. It was related to the 9th summit. After all, only the 9th summit had the aura of the netherworld. He was most likely a disciple of the 9th summit. The light had just shattered, and now, even his water droplet had shattered. This junior brother was really at a clash against the Jade Pool. None of them spoke, but they all had similar thoughts in their eyes. However, they did not think too much about it. Everyone had their own path. For them to be able to walk so far, talent was part of it. Luck was also very important. Jing Ting looked at Jianlan and sighed in his heart. The junior brother of the 9th summit was actually not a bad person and she had helped him before. It was a pity that he had to endure so many blows. If he could help it, he wanted to. Unfortunately, there was nothing he could do. Hongluan and Linan also looked on. This was actually the first time they knew that Jianlan might be a disciple of the 9th summit. From the current situation, it seemed that the other party was really unfortunate. I heard that the disciples of the 9th summit have an outstanding temperament. I wonder if this matter will stir up a storm in his heart. Lin Anxin was rather curious. Hongluan shook her head and didn't think too much about it. This was not man-made. No one could do anything about it. Jianlan stood there calmly. None of this affected him. All he needed to do was wait for the ceremony to end before returning to cultivate. This was what he wanted to do and what he wanted to do. Ao Longyu was also looking at Jianlan at this moment. She lowered her head to look at the water droplet that Jianlan had shattered. After a moment of silence, she walked out. As she moved, the entire Jade Pool suddenly erupted with countless streams of water. The water kept flowing. The sudden change caught everyone's attention. They saw Ao Longyu walking out of the Jade Pool. Chapter 73. It's too dangerous to be under everyone's eyes. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 73. It's too dangerous to be under everyone's eyes. Everyone looked at Ao Longyu. They all didn't understand what she wanted to do. Soon, they saw Ao Longyu walking out of the jade pool. Then, they saw countless water droplets condensing around Ao Longyu, transforming from the original water droplets into real water beads. It was like changing from mist to liquid, then from liquid to solid. They had no idea what Ao Longyu was doing. However, they soon saw Ao Longyu walking towards the junior brother of the 9th summit. She was walking towards Jianglan. Jianglan was surprised. He looked at Ao Longyu and saw that her eyes were unusually calm, as if she had never intended to explain what she was doing. It felt as if she was only doing what she felt was right. The others just looked on. No one spoke. They were actually very curious. When Ao Longyu approached Jianglan, she raised her hand. Then, countless streams of water gathered in her hands. In the end, it completely turned into an aqua-blue bead. The moment the bead took form, Ao Longyu stood in front of Jianglan. She handed over the bead and spoke to Jianglan in a pleasant voice. "This is my gift of gratitude." She didn't say what it was, but she felt that Jianglan should understand. She understood why she was able to enter the jade pool. It was all because of Jianglan. Jianglan looked at the blue bead and decided to take it without hesitation. He reached out to receive it. "Thank you, senior sister." After Jianglan received the pearl, Ao Longyu nodded and turned to walk towards the jade pool. She couldn't leave the jade pool anytime soon, so she could only stay up there. Jianglan took a glance at the blue bead before putting it away. He could tell that this was the essence of everything in the jade pool, Kunlun's creation. The others were also surprised. They knew how valuable the item in Jianglan's hands was. Relying on this bead, his cultivation speed would definitely double. And it would last for a long time. However, no one understood Ao Longyu's intentions. These two people knew each other. Cooperation was random. Everyone knew that. However, no one knew who to ask. They were often in seclusion and did not know both of them. They then decided that they would ask the others in the sect about the situation of these two when there was time. Jing Ting and Mu Xiu understood. The exclusion array formation was something senior sister Ao learned from Jianglan. Senior sister Ao was able to enter the jade pool because of this array formation. However, when they saw Jianglan obtaining the bead, they also felt better. The 9th summit's disadvantage was too obvious. They all understood that it would be very difficult for Jianglan to continue improving. If one ate too many pills, it was easy to develop immunity against them. After Ao Longyu entered the jade pool, the surroundings started to fog up. Everyone understood that it was time to leave. Hong Wan looked at Ao Longyu before sighing and leaving. The others also rode on their swords away from the jade pool. Lin Xia felt that she would not be able to see senior sister for a long time. With this, the difference in strength between them has become greater too. Jianglan did not linger and returned to the 9th summit on his sword. He was very careful along the way, but this time, no one stopped him. Nothing happened. The others seemed to care a lot about their own water droplets and wanted to go back and absorb them immediately. The Jade Pool observance ceremony this time had benefited Jianglan greatly. Not mentioning the Jade Pool goddess diagram. Just Ao Longyu's gift alone was already very useful. He understood why she thanked him. Ao Longyu didn't like owing others, and he didn't need anyone to owe him. However, the timing at which she gave him this treasure was rather unexpected. There were too many people present then. This means that many people know that I have a treasure. I won't be able to leave the 9th summit for the next few decades. I shall just focus on digesting it. After a few decades, they would know that the bead was exhausted. No one would think about it then. Soon, Jianglan returned to the 9th peak. He first went to the peak of the 9th summit to meet his master. A goddess had appeared in the jade pool, and it was no small matter in Kunlun. He needed to tell his master about it. Master, Jiang Lan called out from the peak of the mountain. His master was present today. Mo Jingdong looked at Jiang Lan and said softly. Has the ceremony ended? It's over. Senior Sister Ao of the Third Summit has entered the jade pool, Jiang Lan answered honestly. What do you need? Mo Jingdong suddenly asked. Jiang Lan was a little surprised, but he quickly understood. When the jade pool opened, the other 8 summits in Kunlun had changed. Only the 9th summit remained the same. Besides, he was even given unfair treatment on the spot. Perhaps his master felt that he was wronged. I want to stay inside when the netherworld cave erupts, Jiang Lan requested. Since his master wanted to give him something, he naturally accepted it. I need to check on you once a month, Mo Jingdong said. Many thanks, Master, Jiang Lan immediately said. That way, he could continue to stay inside. Otherwise, he would have to come out after some time. It wouldn't be long before the netherworld's cave eruption reached its peak. It wasn't safe then. And he would naturally act accordingly. After that, Jiang Lan left the peak of the 9th summit and poured some spirit liquid onto the vegetative egg before cultivating. Mo Jingdong watched Jiang Lan leave. This disciple was much more outstanding than he had expected. Perhaps his talent was inferior to those from the other summits, but he felt that it was enough. He was very lucky to have such a disciple. It felt gratifying for him. Jiang Lan's talent wasn't enough, and achieving immortality was difficult for him. Mo Jingdong had always known this. He had also been preparing for this. When the time came, he would help his proud disciple. Chapter 74. Are you sure of the path you are taking? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 74. Are you sure of the path you are taking? After watering the vegetative egg with spirit liquid, Jiang Lan returned to the netherworld cave. In the past, it was always him and the vegetative egg in the netherworld cave. Now, he was the only one left. There was no other way. If the vegetative egg continued to stay in the netherworld cave, it would soon become a bad egg. It wasn't easy for him to raise a vegetative egg. He didn't plan to let it die just like that. When he returned to the netherworld cave, he could sense that the aura of the netherworld had become even heavier. But it didn't hurt him at all. The only thing he needed to care about was to prevent his inner demons from appearing. Let's take a look at the goddess diagram first. Before preparing to cultivate, Jiang Lan needed to figure out the exact effects of the jade pool goddess diagram. Inside his mind, the goddess diagram appeared before him. This time, Jiang Lan could feel that the diagram had been activated and could be used anytime. With a thought, he opened the diagram. There was no goddess on it the last time he had opened it. Now that Ao Longyu had entered the jade pool and became the jade pool's goddess, the diagram had also been activated. This meant that there should be a change within the album. This change was most likely due to Ao Longyu in the jade pool. As for the exact situation, he would only know after seeing it. After the diagram was opened, the jade pool from before appeared again. It was a diagram of a calm lake. However, Ao Longyu was nowhere to be seen. Jiang Lan then looked elsewhere. Then, he saw a snow-white dragon on the shore. It was very small. If I'm not wrong, this should be Ao Longyu, right? It's exactly the same as what I saw in the bath scene last time, and it's not much bigger compared to then. Could she be underaged? However, Ao Longyu in her human form did not look like an underaged person at all. Although she didn't look mature, she didn't look like a child either. She was more like a youth. She had slender legs and a good figure. She was a little immature, but definitely not a child. Jiang Lan shook his head. He did not know much about the growth cycle of the dragons. Then, he began to use the jade pool goddess painting. This was a shared medium. With this, Jianglan could share the fortuitous opportunities of the Jade Pool. One could have a share of the essence of all things gathered in the Jade Pool by Kunlun. However, after careful inspection by Jianglan, he discovered that there could be said to be no fortuitous opportunity in the Jade Pool. Something was wrong. Is it because the goddess has just appeared and the fortuitous opportunity has yet to condense, or has it already been used up? Jianglan instantly thought of the bead on his body. It seemed to have gathered a large portion of the essence of the Jade Pool. Let's observe for a while more. There was no way to confirm this matter. However, although the essence of all living things would be continuously condensed later on in the Jade Pool, a portion of it would directly enter the Jade Pool goddess diagram. Therefore, even if he continued to cultivate, he would not be discovered. Jianglan closed the Jade Pool goddess painting and started cultivating. Right now, not cultivating for a day was equivalent to wasting a day of resources. The eruption of aura at the Netherworld cave's entrance only lasted for a few years. If he missed it, he would have to wait for another 100 years. Furthermore, there was still the bead from Ao Longyu. This bead was a tricky thing. He needed to absorb it as soon as possible. As for the 9th summit, Jianglan decided to wait for 30 to 50 years before going out again. His master would not let him go down the mountain easily these few years either. If he had to go out to gain experience, he would choose to go catch a few more ice cicadas again. With no other thoughts in mind, Jianglan cultivated in peace. At the same time, with the help of the Netherworld aura and the Jade Pool's essence from the bead, his cultivation speed increased significantly. This was not to mention the resources he would gain from signing in. 3 years later, Jianglan, who was originally cultivating, suddenly heard a voice. This voice seemed to come from an endless abyss. The moment the voice appeared, he felt as if he had fallen into the depths of hell. At this moment, Jianglan stayed true to his heart and circulated his cultivation. He walked out of the abyss step by step. He didn't look back. He kept his peace and advanced slowly. He couldn't see anything. It was as if the darkness of the world made one feel blind. Darkness was the thing that affected one's heart the most. But Jianglan didn't mind. His steps were stable, and his mind was one with his body. Step by step, he walked out of the abyss. Why don't you look back? Perhaps the path you took was wrong in the first place. You think you're leaving the darkness, but in reality, you're walking towards a bottomless abyss. If you don't turn back, how can you be sure of your own path? Are you sure you are heading the right way? Or perhaps you have been wrong all along. An ethereal voice sounded in his mind. It wanted to disintegrate Jianglan's mind and faith, making him suspicious of his own cultivation path. However, Jianglan ignored it. This was the Netherworld's ravings. It was everywhere. This time, it was just an accidental intrusion. In the past, it was impossible for the other party to have such an influence. Whether or not the path under his feet was right. This was a question that no one had a clear answer to. Before reaching the end, who could be sure? Why should he doubt it? Wasn't this a problem that existed in the first place? Jianglan advanced step by step without stopping. A ray of light pierced through the darkness. And Jianglan was walking towards the light step by step. He seemed to have walked for a long time. But in reality, it was fleeting. When he walked out, he saw light. If he had fallen into the abyss previously, he could be said to be doomed. Jianglan opened his eyes, his heart palpitating. It was very dangerous just now. He didn't check if there were any problems with his body. Instead, he looked at the entrance to the Netherworld. At this moment, Jianglan seemed to see a figure standing by the well. It was similar to that of the aura of the Netherworld. Has the major eruption started? No wonder I almost lost my mind. It should be the peak of the eruption at the Netherworld's entrance now. Even he might not be able to guard his mind and remain unaffected. Chapter 75. The most outstanding disciple of the ninth summit. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 75. The most outstanding disciple of the ninth summit. Time flies when cultivating here at this period. Jiang Lan couldn't help but sigh as he faced the eruption of the netherworld's entrance. If he could enter the netherworld to train, his training speed would be unimaginable. Unfortunately, even if he was allowed to enter casually, he would not choose to go there to cultivate. This was because he would be severely affected. If he chose to do that, the plan would only backfire on him. Furthermore, it would affect his immortal path. Not long after, Jiang Lan stood up and planned to leave the netherworld cave. He would build a house at the entrance of the cave and cultivate. This should only last for a year or two. At the same time, he would guard the entrance to the netherworld to see if any netherworld beings would come out. However, just as Jiang Lan got up, he felt someone enter the netherworld cave. It was his master. Mo Jingdong walked in. The moment he entered, he saw Jiang Lan. The entrance to the netherworld aura eruption had reached its highest peak. He was worried that Jiang Lan would be trapped within it. Thus, he had specially come over. It seemed like he was overthinking. At this moment, Jiang Lan was already planning to retreat. Master! Jiang Lan called out. The eruption has already reached its peak. How do you feel? Mo Jingdong asked Jiang Lan. It's a bit dangerous, Jiang Lan said with a serious expression. It was indeed dangerous. Otherwise, he wouldn't have chosen to leave this place. Mo Jingdong nodded. This disciple of his knew his limits. Then, without saying anything, he walked towards the well. Jiang Lan stood where he was and didn't follow him. That well wasn't something he could look at right now. Although he was curious about the well, he was not strong enough. When he was strong enough, he would look into it. He needed to become an immortal. Although it was still very far away. But it was much closer than before. It was still out of reach for the current him. Jiang Lan looked at his master standing in front of the well. From his angle, he could see his master's side profile. His master had an expression of calmness. It was as if this well's threat had not exceeded what he expected. Mo Jingdong did not take another look. He only took a glance before turning around and leaving. Let's go. Looks like nothing will come out this time, Mo Jingdong said as he approached Jiang Lan. Jiang Lan nodded and followed. Although he did not understand why his master was so certain, he knew that his master was right. Are you sure you want to continue training at the entrance of the netherworld cave? Yes, master. At the entrance to the netherworld cave, Mo Jingdong looked at Jiang Lan and said. You are the disciple with the highest potential to inherit the ninth summit. You should not be guarding the entrance to the netherworld cave. Jiang Lan was silent. He only wanted to cultivate. Besides, it seemed like there were no other powerful disciples competing for the ninth summit. Mo Jingdong smiled at Jiang Lan. Same old rules. Come to me once a month so that I can check if you have any inner demons. Many thanks, master. Jiang Lan bowed his head in thanks. Jiang Lan was very worried about himself during the eruption process. This was especially so after being placed in the previous situation. If something really went wrong, at least his master could discover it as soon as possible. Then, Jiang Lan built a small wooden hut at the entrance of the netherworld cave. He sat inside and focused on cultivating. During this period of time, he would go to the peak of the ninth summit every month. After that, he would water the vegetative egg and take care of the ninth summit's roads. To ensure that the ninth summit did not look abandoned. There were no changes to the vegetative egg. It was still a potted plant. Jiang Lan's cultivation progress had always been at its peak. 3 years later, the eruption of the netherworld ended. Jianlan moved into the netherworld cave again. This time, he brought the vegetative egg with him. Currently, his cultivation was still at the mid-stage essence soul realm, only a step away from the late stage. During this period of time, Jianlan had specially gone into the netherworld cave to sign in whenever he could. The eruption would most likely make the rewards much better. And it was indeed proven true. Be it pills, dharma treasures, or cultivation techniques, they were better than before. This also greatly increased Jianlan's cultivation speed. During this period of time, Jianlan had never left the 9th summit. He had always lived on the 9th summit. Doing what he had to do, 20 years later. The bead Ao Longyu had given him shattered. The absorption of all the essence within was complete. At this moment, Jianlan had already stepped into the late stage essence soul realm. However, the shattering of the pearl meant that his cultivation had temporarily come to an end. After leaving the netherworld cave, Jianlan walked around the 9th summit. It was mainly to calm himself down. Then he read some books. And learned of some array formations. He also watered his vegetative egg. He rarely heard of any news regarding what was happening outside the 9th summit. However, he would occasionally hear his master say that the disciples of the other peaks were cultivating diligently. They seemed to be going to participate in some sort of gathering or competition. Jianlan was worried for a while. He was afraid that his master would say that every summit was required to send an outstanding disciple to attend. After all, there was no disciple more outstanding than him in the 9th summit. After taking care of some of the paths in the 9th summit, Jianlan returned to the netherworld cave. The bead senior sister Ao gave me has already been used up. After so many years, I don't think anyone will think about it anymore. There were also some benefits to using up the bead. On the surface, his cultivation had reached the late stage golden core realm. Theoretically, he wanted it to be at the mid-stage golden core realm, but that bead had already been used up. If his cultivation didn't increase by a huge margin, it wouldn't make sense. However, it was still better for him to stay at the late stage golden core realm on the surface for a longer period of time. I'll have to use the goddess diagram for my future cultivation. After so many years, the accumulated essence in it shouldn't be lacking anymore. After sitting down cross-legged, Jianlan opened the jade pool goddess diagram in his mind. He intended to cultivate using it. But this time, Jianlan didn't see the dragon by the lake. Then, he looked at the lake. Neither was there anyone there. Or rather, Ao Longyu was nowhere to be seen on the diagram. Has she disappeared? Chapter 76. Peering into the void. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 76. Peering into the void. It was true that Jianlan did not find Ao Longyu at first glance. However, he felt that something was wrong with the lake. He felt ripples on the water surface. She was most likely in the water. So the diagram is actually not fixed. Jianlan was surprised. However, Ao Longyu was a dragon race cultivator, so it wasn't too bad that she didn't appear in human form. After that, Jianlan didn't pay much attention to it. He could feel that the goddess diagram could assist him in his cultivation. It was even more convenient than the bead. The essence was also easier for him to absorb. Jianlan opened the diagram mentally and felt as if he had entered the jade pool himself. The essence of all things began to be absorbed by Jianlan. His cultivation speed kept increasing. With the help of the goddess diagram, Jianlan cultivated for another 20 years. This year, Jianlan opened his eyes. This year was the 100th year since he had entered the 9th summit. He had successfully entered the perfected essence soul realm from an ordinary person. He was only a single step away from reaching the void refinement realm. On the surface, his cultivation was still at the late stage golden core realm. He had flipped open the goddess diagram many times throughout this entire duration, and it would change every few days. Sometimes Ao Longyu would be in the water, sometimes she would be floating on the surface of the water, and sometimes she would be lying by the lake. Jianlan felt like he was raising a fish. Just that he did not need to feed it. However, he didn't pay much attention to it after taking a look at it a few times. I have already reached the stage of perfection for my current cultivation realm. I wonder what will happen after drinking it. Jianlan looked at the wine in his hand. If he could use some other method, he really didn't want to enter the void refinement realm by getting drunk. This was because he might not be able to control his actions after he had become drunk. Even though his heart was calm, after getting drunk, his actions and logic would inevitably deviate from his normal self. What if he said something that he would not normally say? What if he did things that he would not normally do? It would not be a big deal if only something minor happened. He was afraid that too many of his secrets would be discovered. Jianlan looked at the wine. Finally, he opened the lid. He downed it in one gulp. If he wanted to achieve immortality as soon as possible, he had to endure some risks. And as long as he wasn't too drunk, there wouldn't be any big problems. At most, his master would think that he was stupid. He was just afraid that he was unable to remember what had happened when he was drunk after he sobered up. After drinking the bejeweled nectar wine, Jianlan activated the one-leaf vision. This was to prevent him from being seen through. Jianlan closed his eyes and began to feel the changes in his body and spirit. It was said that one mouth of bejeweled nectar wine causes one to have a dream that lasts 10 years, while consuming a bottle causes one to forget 100 years of memory. He did not dare to underestimate it. Soon, Jianlan felt that he had fallen asleep, yet awake at the same time. But more so, he felt at peace. The world seemed to have quietened down. His heart became at ease and joy filled his heart. It was a strange feeling. Then, he opened his eyes. At this moment, he felt that he shouldn't be sitting here cultivating. Instead, he should go out for a walk, water the plants, remove the weeds, look at the sky, and farm the land. As if that was the only way to know how to move forward. Jianlan no longer hesitated. He brought the vegetative egg and left the netherworld cave. He left the residence that he had cultivated for nearly 100 years and returned to the house outside. The house that had been uninhabited for a long time was rather dilapidated. Under normal circumstances, Jianlan would renovate it once every 20 years. It was a little early now, but it was still suitable for repair. Jianlan put down the vegetative egg, as well as the idea of cultivation that he hadn't relaxed on in all these years. He began to repair the house in the courtyard, removing the surrounding grass. He also planted some flowers inside and outside the courtyard. He was busy for 7 days before he finished everything. He stood in the courtyard and looked around. However, the flowers had yet to bloom and the grass had yet to sprout. It looked desolate. However, Jianlan knew that it wouldn't be long before this place changed. A gentle breeze blew past. It blew the corner of Jianlan's clothes. He did not cultivate. Instead, he busied himself in the 9th summit like an ordinary person. He had things to do every day. This was because the 9th summit was huge. However, Jianlan didn't use any dermic powers. He just did it himself personally and manually. Removing the grass, repairing the road, and cleaning the river. He planted flowers, raised fish, and chopped firewood. Spring passed and autumn came. Flowers bloomed and fell. 10 years passed in a flash. This winter, the world started to snow. Jianlan stood in the courtyard and watered the vegetative egg with spirit liquid. He looked at the withered flowers and the old house. After which, he looked at the white expanse of snow. Then, he put down the spirit liquid bottle, picked up the broom, and began sweeping the snow. Winter passed and spring arrived. Jianlan felt the wind blowing against him. The grass had begun to sprout. As they broke out of the ground, they seemed to be spying on this new world. It was as if they wanted to see this resplendent world and experience this magnificent world. Jianlan closed his eyes and listened to everything. A moment later, he opened his eyes again. His eyes were calm and clear. However, there was a flash of light. He had finally woken up. He had slept for 10 years and was drunk for 10 years. When Jianlan woke up, he didn't move. He still stood in the courtyard, still looking at everything before him. He did not care about favors or humiliation. He watched the flowers bloom and fall in front of the court. He did not care if he left or stayed. He looked at the clouds in the sky. He had stayed here while day and night alternated, and it was obvious that the 4 seasons had changed. A strong wind blew through the courtyard, ruffling Jianlan's long clothes. Feeling the chill in the wind, Jianlan closed his eyes again. Crack! A clear voice sounded in Jianlan's mind. At this moment, Jianlan felt as if he was standing in front of a door. Behind the door was an endless void. It was as if by entering, he would be able to search for the path of immortality that he had been pursuing for a long time. Void Refinement Realm. Chapter 77. Are you going to the Witch Cloud Gathering? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 77. Are you going to the Witch Cloud Gathering? A dream that had lasted 10 years. After waking up from his dream, his essence soul became clear, and he was finally able to enter the void to search for the gates towards immortality. Jianlan experienced 10 years of dream, 10 years of intoxication. The moment he woke up, he entered his mental realm. His essence soul was walking towards the void door. Finally, he reached the peak of the path and stood in front of the door. His essence soul was looking straight into the void, using the void to refine his spirit. He had reached the void refinement realm. He was one step closer to reaching the gates of immortality. It could be said that as long as he worked hard, he would be able to find the gate of immortality. It was just that finding it was difficult, and entering it was even harder. After entering, he would have to face the heavenly tribulation head-on, and only after he succeeded, would he become an immortal. Thus, the path to immortality was exceptionally difficult. With the help of the bejeweled nectar wine, Jianlan broke through the essence soul realm and he felt that his mental state had also advanced a step further. Gaining supreme power had yet to affect his mental state. At least for now. However, it was hard to say after becoming an immortal. At present, he had only cultivated for 110 years. Even genius disciples were still working hard to advance their essence soul. Powerful disparities would make one feel superior, causing one to begin to think of many things. This was especially so when he still had a system. If he didn't control himself well, his state of mind would become unstable. When that happens, the grand desolate world would teach him a lesson. Therefore, he had to cultivate diligently. He would hide in the 9th summit and try not to go out. After becoming an immortal, he could consider going out occasionally. However, immortals weren't invincible. In fact, immortals often died. He ought to maintain his heart and cultivate in peace. He absolutely wouldn't underestimate any enemies. Right now, he had an additional bottle of bejeweled nectar wine that seemed to taste pretty good. One day, he could give it to his master after he thought of a reasonable reason. The effect should be negligible to his master. However, the main thing was the flavor of the wine. At the peak of the 9th summit, Mo Jingdong heaved a sigh of relief. Earlier, he had discovered that Jianlan had left the netherworld cave and was working in the courtyard. He didn't care much about it at first. However, a month had passed, and he discovered that Jianlan was still removing the weeds. Something was abnormal. Although Jianlan would come out to weed and clean the hall, he would only do so once every few months. It had only been a month. Then, he realized that his disciple did not come out to clean after a month, but rather, he had cleaned for a month. This unexpected discovery made him particularly concerned. He thought that his disciple was affected by inner demons. When he was about to check, he felt that something was amiss. Jiang Lan's expression was calm, as if he hadn't been invaded by his inner demons. Half alarmed, he observed for another few months. Then, to his surprise, he discovered an aura appearing around Jiang Lan. It was caused by the change in his state of mind. Jiang Lan's temperament was exceptional, and his cultivation realm was also very high. However, Mo Jingdong was still shocked. The change in his state of mind this time was truly unbelievable. To be able to achieve this at such a young age. The sun and moon alternated, and the 4 seasons changed. Watching the flowers bloom and fall, watching the clouds roll and drift. Being inside it and feeling all of nature. His heart was like a lake, moving with the waves. Once he noticed this, Mo Jingdong sealed off the 9th summit, refusing to let anyone get close to him. This was to prevent anyone from disturbing Jiang Lan. Jiang Lan was undergoing a metamorphosis. If he wasn't careful, he might fail and fall. Mo Jingdong was also paying attention to everything that happened in and around the 9th summit. This protection lasted for 10 years. Finally, on this day, he sensed that aura slowly descending and disappearing from the world. The transformation was successful. 10 years, it's finally over. Mo Jingdong looked at the other 8 summits. Quite a few people were preparing something. Speaking of which, the witch cloud gathering and the party will be leaving in a few days. Mo Jingdong turned around and looked at Jiang Lan's courtyard. He had some thoughts in his mind. Let's see if he's willing to go. The awakened Jiang Lan had successfully entered the void refinement realm. But he did not intend to rest. Instead, he wanted to move the vegetative egg back to the netherworld cave and continue cultivating using the netherworld aura and the goddess diagram. He wanted to find the gate of immortality as soon as possible. Just as he was about to return to the netherworld cave, he received news from his master. Master should have seen my actions for the past 10 years. There shouldn't be any possibility of him seeing through my cultivation realm, but he must have seen through the change in my mental state. On the surface, his cultivation was at the late-stage golden core realm, only a step away from perfection. Following the change in his mental state, his cultivation level should have changed too. It would only take 2 years for him to reach perfection. 2 years was very short. After that, Jiang Lan went to see his master. Master. Arriving at the peak of the 9th summit, Jiang Lan bowed respectfully. Your state of mind has changed. Do you intend to explore the world outside? Mo Jingdong asked. Jiang Lan was stunned for a moment. He was not surprised that his master knew about the change in his mental state. But would he have to go out if his mental state had changed? It was too early. It was not time yet. He was still far from becoming an immortal. Master, I've been neglecting my cultivation for the past 10 years. Jiang Lan looked troubled. His meaning was clear. He didn't want to go. Have you heard of the witch cloud gathering? In the grand desolate world, most of the young talents would come and meet at this convention. You don't need to fight with others. You just need to experience and take a look at the outside world. There will be several elders from Kunlun leading the team, so there is no need to worry about safety. How about it? Mo Jingdong looked at Jiang Lan as if trying to convince him. Then he added. The entire journey would take not more than 3 months. This is a great opportunity to understand the vast world. It's completely different from what you read in the books. Traveling 10,000 miles is better than reading 10,000 books. Mo Jingdong looked at Jiang Lan, waiting for his answer. There was no reason not to go. Chapter 78. 10 years break from signing in. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 78. 10 years break from signing in. Jiang Lan lowered his eyebrows. According to his master, the witch cloud gathering seemed safe. But with so many people gathered together, would it truly be safe? Jiang Lan didn't believe him. As long as it was a form of training, as long as there was competition, there would usually be some accidents. He would definitely encounter it if he really went. It wouldn't be a problem if he didn't go out. During these 50 years, he had stayed in the 9th summit and trained for 110 years. Besides encountering a few situations where he had to leave the 9th summit 50 years ago, he did not encounter anything else. As it turned out, it was still the safest if he stayed in the 9th summit. Doing so would not affect his cultivation and him signing in. Although it was possible to sign something good after leaving for 3 months. But it was too far and too long. He was currently at the void refinement realm, but once he used his actual cultivation base in front of everyone, it would be difficult for him to cultivate quietly after that. In short, he just wasn't strong enough. Master, my cultivation is still very weak. Jiang Lan refused. He still felt that it was better to continue cultivating in the 9th summit. If he had to change an environment, he could go to the other summits. He did not have to go out. Moreover, he had dreamed for 10 years, which meant that he had not signed in for 10 years. Who knew how big the accumulation of great Tao gift had reached? If he managed to get his hands on another creation of heaven and earth, it would be much easier for him to become an immortal. Mo Jingdong looked at Jiang Lan for a moment, then said, "There's nothing wrong with cultivating hard. However, if you don't interact with the outside world, it's easy to be separated from the outside world." He felt that this disciple was too eccentric. Even though he had a good temperament, he did not have to refuse to interact with others. Not being able to see the light and darkness of others will cause you to fall into a blind spot, especially with your temperament, Mo Jingdong added. Disciple will often reflect on himself, Jiang Lan replied with his head lowered. His master was right. Sometimes, the lack of socializing would put him in the wrong path. This required caution. This was especially the case for him. The further he walked, the more careless he would be. Fortunately, his master had reminded him earlier. Since Jiang Lan had said so, what else could Mo Jingdong say? So be it. You can visit the other summits in Kunlun when you have time, said Mo Jingdong. It was always right to go out for a breather. He wanted to take a look at his senior brother and junior brother's behavior and personality so that he could have a better understanding of himself. It had been decades since Jiang Lan left the 9th summit. However, the 9th summit was well taken care of. All right. Jiang Lan nodded. This was still possible. It was better than training outside. Especially after so many years, no one would remember him. No one would care about the bead Ao Longyu gave him. Of course, on the surface, his cultivation was about to reach the perfected golden core realm, but in fact, it had far exceeded most of his peers. He was still a genius. After all, the bead that Ao Longyu gave him was too extraordinary. In fact, he was pretty embarrassed to suppress his cultivation level by so much. Under normal circumstances, genius disciples needed about 150 years before they attempted to break through to the essence soul realm. He was only 110 years old now. This was all because of the resources he had. However, after so many years, the few people he knew were probably already essence soul cultivators. He had decided to check them out when he had the time. If they were only at the perfected golden core realm, he would not allow his superficial cultivation to advance to the essence soul realm. At present, he knew roughly 4 golden core cultivators. If senior sister Ao didn't say anything, she was definitely already an essence soul cultivator. Next was the 2 he had met at the entrance to the Netherworld cave, and lastly, senior sister Lin from the 3rd summit. In theory, they should all have reached the essence soul realm. After that, Jiang Lan didn't think too much about it. He went back to cultivate and signed in while he was at it. No one from the 9th summit is going this time. After Jiang Lan went to cultivate, a middle-aged man appeared on the 9th summit to ask Mo Jingdong. His hair was a little messy, and one of his strands of white hair was particularly eye-catching. His stubble was not completely shaved either. He looked pretty unkempt. Mo Jingdong nodded helplessly. Yes, my disciple doesn't like to travel. It happens once every few hundred years. It would be a shame not to go. It's good for him to see the outside world. The middle-aged man stood beside Mo Jingdong and continued. I heard that this disciple of yours has quite a good disposition. However, he's about to become a hermit. He has lost all his emotions and desires. He doesn't look like a young man at all. Ha! Mo Jingdong laughed. He's over 100 years old. He's not young anymore. Jiu Zhongtian did not continue on this. Instead, he looked at Mo Jingdong with a serious expression. What do you plan to do when he reaches the void refinement realm, the final step before stepping past the immortal gate? Many people knew how difficult this step was. It was easy for some people, but for others, it was a dead end. Jiang Lan naturally wouldn't encounter a dead end, but his path definitely wasn't easy. He needed external help. Mo Jingdong looked at Jiu Zhongtian and did not answer the question. Jiang Lan is the only disciple I have recognized in so many years. So what do you want to do? Jiu Zhongtian asked. Not much, Mo Jingdong said calmly. Helping him become an immortal is part of my job as his master. Jiu Zhongtian looked at Mo Jingdong and remained silent. Then, he stopped asking about this matter. Are you sure he's not going? We should set off in a few days. No, Mo Jingdong shook his head. Jiang Lan is not an impulsive person. He knows his limits. If he doesn't want to go, he should have his own plans. Jiu Zhongtian did not nod and disappeared. Since that was the case, there was no need to say anything more. However, it was not easy for the 9th summit to have a disciple. He had thought that he would definitely go. After all, by doing so, the outside world would know that the 9th summit was still around. Otherwise, many people would not know that Kunlun still had the 9th summit. Some people had begun to think that Kunlun only had 8 summits. Mo Jingdong understood that, but it was just an empty title. He didn't pursue fame and neither did he care about it. Chapter 79. Superior Spell. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 79. Superior Spell. Ao Longyu stood beside the jade pool. Several decades had passed. She had successfully entered the mid-stage Essence Soul realm. She had walked ahead of most of them. However, she suddenly thought of something recently. That was why she went to find her junior sister. She sat there waiting for her junior sister to arrive. She knew of the witch cloud gathering. If it was any other time, she would definitely attend it. However, she could not go now. She was still unable to leave the jade pool. This was the price. The price of becoming the jade pool goddess. But it was indeed the fastest way to become stronger. The resources all over Kunlun might not even be as abundant as the jade pools, and her cultivation speed seemed to have grown wings here. Senior sister, I can't enter. Suddenly, a voice sounded. Ao Longyu rose to her feet and walked toward the edge of the mountain. She moved her hands, as if she was opening up a normal path for the people who came over so that the people outside could enter. Soon, Lin Xia flew in on her sword. She looked a little disheveled. Senior sister, staying here seems to cause me to encounter problems easily. Lin Xia didn't dare to go to the jade pool. She could only stay at the edge of her sword. It's indeed a little troublesome. Junior sister, are you going to the witch cloud gathering? Ao Longyu nodded slightly before asking. No, I have to go into seclusion to advance to the Essence Soul realm in the next 2 days. I can only go next time. Lin Xia looked at Ao Longyu curiously. Senior sister, did you miss me? She was suddenly called here. Ao Longyu looked at Lin Xia. She felt that this junior sister of hers had always been very friendly. She didn't hate it because this junior sister's character was likable. I want to ask you something. Ao Longyu looked at Lin Xia and said. I remember that junior sister used a recording tool to record the process of me coming out of the water previously, right? When Lin Xia heard this, she was stunned. I just recorded it for fun. Lin Xia felt a little guilty. I know. Ao Longyu looked at Lin Xia, her voice as calm as ever. Can I have the recording tool? Lin Xia did not dare to look at Ao Longyu. She whispered. I have lost it. Ao Longyu. I'm trying to find it now. Lin Xia immediately said. I've already found who took it. I'll be taking it back in a few days. Who has it? Asked Ao Longyu. I heard it was at senior sister Celine's place last time. I'll go look for her these few days, said Lin Xia. Then, she asked curiously. Senior sister didn't care about that Dharma treasure before. Why did you suddenly want to find it back? The recording tool had recorded senior sister Ao's dragon body, not her naked body. Ao Longyu lowered her brows and remained silent. She was no longer a child. Under normal circumstances, there was nothing wrong with showing his dragon body in front of others. However, she kept having the feeling that she was being spied upon by others recently. She had felt uncomfortable. That was why she wanted it back. Would someone have taken a look at what's recorded? Asked Ao Longyu. If it's seen, it will be shown. Currently, it's still sealed. I've never heard of anyone activating it, Lin Xia said immediately. It seems that after so many years, senior sister had begun to care about some things. But just like before, she was still expressionless. Ao Longyu nodded. It would be best if no one had seen that scene. Although it was nothing much to look at, she felt more comfortable if no one had seen it. Jiang Lan then returned to the Netherworld cave. He was not in a hurry to sign in. Instead, he watered the vegetative egg. All these years, he had not forgotten to water spirit liquid onto the vegetative egg. However, 100 years had passed. This vegetative egg shouldn't be able to hatch anymore. Even an ordinary tree would have gained sentience after being watered with spirit liquid for 100 years. But this vegetative egg had no reaction at all. Looks like it's really just a vegetative egg. What was a vegetative egg? It meant that it was like a vegetative person. Of course, Jiang Lan didn't mind. He wanted to continue raising it. After raising it for 100 years, he was already used to it. After settling these matters, Jiang Lan sat down cross-legged. System, I shall sign in here. It was time to see if he would get something good after he didn't sign it for 10 years. Ding! Signed in successfully. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the gift of the Great Tao. You have obtained the superior spell, Power of 9 Tribulations. Power of 9 Tribulations. A superior spell technique that's an upgraded version of the Power of 9 Bulls. This is an immortal spell. Only those possessing the divine power spiritual suppression force and the power of 9 bulls can learn this spell. Jiang Lan was surprised to see the power of 9 tribulations. This spell technique was not something he could cultivate. And he had tried but realized he couldn't learn it. He had to fully master the power of 9 bulls first. And the true introduction of the power of 9 tribulations had yet to appear. But how did these 9 bulls ascend to become 9 tribulations? Is this bull very powerful? What kind of bull is it? After that, Jiang Lan stopped thinking about it. When he finished learning the power of 9 bulls, he would know the specifics. However, it could be seen that after not signing in for 10 years, he was able to gain something good. However, things like the creation pill were indeed difficult to obtain. Jiang Lan shook his head and focused his mind. He was not in a hurry to advance now. Cultivation did not necessarily mean that one had to increase one's cultivation level. Familiarizing oneself with one's current realm and making one's spell and technique stronger were also part of cultivation. They were all equally important. He had to stay at the void refinement realm for a very long time, so he had to familiarize himself with this cultivation base so that he could unleash his most powerful spell techniques. This was the only way to deal with sudden changes. Even if there were no unforeseen circumstances, he had to be prepared for them. Danger would not wait for anyone. Nor would it give him time to react when it came. Currently, the most important matter at hand was naturally mastering the power of 9 bulls. After advancing to the void refinement realm, the power of 9 bulls should be able to easily advance from the power of 7 bulls to the power of 8 bulls. He could also attempt to reach the 9th step from the 8th step for his 9 steps of heavenly travel. He also had to familiarize himself with his other spells, techniques and artifacts. Jianglan spent 3 days familiarizing himself with the power of 9 bulls. Although he had yet to enter the power of the 8 bulls immediately, the power of the 7 bulls was already ridiculously strong. He felt like he could fight against void refinement mighty figures. When he mastered the power of 9 bulls, he wondered if he would be able to fight against immortals. Probably not. He just didn't know if he could directly learn the power of 9 tribulations. Chapter 80. 100 Years of Change. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 80. 100 Years of Change. While Jianglan was still familiarizing himself with his spells and techniques, he suddenly received a message. It was news of Kunlun's departure for the Witch Cloud Gathering. He was supposed to go and send them off. It was not that he had to go, but his master wanted him to see the situation. It was not too late to regret it if he wanted to go. Master, do you really want me to go out for a walk? Jianglan was helpless. However, he decided he should make a trip out in the end. After all, he had already reached the void refinement realm. It was good for him to take a stroll. He was very close to immortality. In a few decades or a century, he might have to go out and undergo tribulation. At that time, Master would probably be happy that he would finally go out of 9th Summit to train. After that, Jianglan left the 9th Summit and arrived at the Kunlun main hall. This was where those who were heading for the Witch Cloud Gathering gathered before they left. The sun was warm and the breeze was gentle. Jianglan walked up the stairs leading to the main hall. Beside him, some disciples were also walking up. Jianglan occasionally took a few glances and discovered that these people's clothes were different from his. Most of them were Qi Refinement and Foundation Establishment disciples. It turns out that the new disciples' attire has been changed. Clothes change once every 100 years. One cycle every 1,000 years. Therefore, there was a high chance of knowing how long others had been in the sect for. Of course, there were also some disciples who chose not to wear the sect's clothes. So it was not absolute. Jianglan came from the 9th Summit, and very few people knew him. This time, he also heard some discussions. For example, which peak is this senior brother from? I feel like he has restrained some of his strength. Is he a golden core? I don't know. I've never seen him before. Should we go up and ask? If you do, go ahead. As Jianglan walked on the road, he felt that he was really not used to this. This was not what his senior brother talked about in the past. Without another thought, Jianglan walked towards the main hall. Soon, he arrived at the square. Then, he found a corner and stood there. On the square, he saw a floating disc. It was a large flying magical equipment. There were some disciples up there. With a cursory glance, he realized that there were quite a number of immortals on it. The weakest was at the Essence Soul realm. If he went up, he would probably be the only golden core among a group of Essence Soul and Void Refinement cultivators. In fact, even if it was his surface cultivation, he could be said to have improved very quickly. However, he could not improve so quickly after that. He could not maintain the cultivation speed of a genius by always relying on resources. Otherwise, some geniuses would feel terrible. It was easy for him to make enemies for no reason if he kept this up. But he couldn't be too slow either. This was to prevent others from finding trouble with him for no reason. Jiang Lan stood in a corner and watched as many disciples flew towards the flying Dharma treasure. After a long time, there were many people standing on it. They were all outstanding disciples of the sect. Jiang Lan was only an outstanding disciple of the ninth summit. "Senior brother, what must I do to qualify for the witch cloud gathering?" A voice suddenly rang out beside Jiang Lan. It was a teenager. His cultivation was at the Qi refinement realm. He should have only joined the sect for 2 years. "Become one of the few outstanding disciples of each summit," Jiang Lan replied. That was probably the case. He was one of the few outstanding disciples in the ninth summit, and he was also the personal disciple of the ninth summit's summit leader. He was also the one who had the highest potential of being the successor to the ninth summit's summit leader. "Is there a cultivation threshold?" that youth asked again. Jiang Lan looked at the flying Dharma treasure and said, "The senior brothers and sisters above are at least at the essence soul realm." The youth was confused. That was too far away for him. Essence souls. Even the geniuses in the sect needed about 150 years to advance to the essence soul realm. For mediocre people like him, it would be good enough if he could step into the essence soul realm within 300 years. "Thank you for explaining, senior brother." The young man thanked him and left. He didn't intend to disturb Jiang Lan. Jiang Lan didn't mind it and just stood there watching. There were many people in the square with different cultivations. They were talking among themselves and had their own topics of conversation. Most of them were envious of the people on the flying Dharma treasure. It was as if they were using those people as role models. Some people felt that it was a pity. It was as if they had just narrowly missed the benchmark and could have been the one who boarded the flying Dharma treasure and went to the witch cloud gathering. Although it's a little noisy, it's not a bad experience. Master is right. I should take a walk around the sect occasionally. However, he would not think of it if it was too far away. It was better not to attract attention. Soon, the flying Dharma treasure began to rise into the sky. Almost everyone was present. At this moment, a middle-aged man stood at the front of the Dharma treasure. There was a strand of white hair in his messy hair. He looked towards the square and slowly said, "Which other personal disciple wants to go? You can come right up." Jiang Lan lowered his head. He felt like this senior was looking at him. Jiu Zhongtian had indeed looked at Jiang Lan, but when he saw that Jiang Lan had no intention of coming up, he decided not to bring him up. As long as Jiang Lan was hesitant or seemed to have some worries about going, he would take action and bring him up. However, he decided to forget about it after seeing Jiang Lan's reaction. "Since there isn't, let's go." Jiu Zhongtian's deep voice sounded. And then, the flying Dharma treasure flew into the sky. "Have a safe journey, senior brothers and sisters." The disciples lowered their heads and sent them off. Jiang Lan also lowered his head. He wanted to follow the masses. Seeing these people leave successfully, he heaved a sigh of relief. At the very least, there weren't any last-minute changes that would cause him to be dragged along. Maybe next time. Next time, he would be an immortal. At least a human immortal. Doing so would also fulfill his master's wish. Finally, there would be disciples from the ninth summit participating in various activities and meetings. After Jiu Zhongtian and the others left, the people in the square also started to disperse. Jiang Lan naturally intended to return to the ninth summit to continue cultivating. These people were going out for 3 months. However, it did not matter much to him.